Problems and effects of missionaries.
What a weekend full of history and beaches.
Yes. Thanks again for the trip. It gave me a chance to relax and think about how Kenya was shaped to be today.
Of course. Now for one last lesson.
Do we have to?
It is important to know why Christianity spread successfully, what challenges missionaries faced, and the lasting effects of it.
I suppose.
To begin, Said did not want to be rude to his new European trading partners. He actually gave introductions to the missionaries upon first arrival. This was to strengthen relations between the countries. This made the Africans more welcoming to the missionaries.
How did the missionaries keep their relationship with the Africans strong?
Krampf was very smart and made learning Kiswahili a priority. He even published a dictionary and a Bible translation in Swahili.
Wow, and everyone understood him?
Since Swahili was spoken on the coast, it was mostly understood. But he even made a point to learn the local languages such as Kikamba and Kirabai. Missionaries afterwards followed his role. The Scottish Church used Gikuyu when they reached around Mount Kenya.
And this must have made the people feel more comfortable and actually understood what was being said. Smart move.
Exactly. The missionaries would go a step further and use those Africans who had already converted to preach and spread the message as well. This helped their cause since it wasn't just white European foreigners speaking to the people.
Didn't you mention something about free education too?
As I mentioned earlier, the missionaries did their best to practice what they were preaching and offered services dealing with health care, education, and food. This again had people become interested in what they were saying, especially since they discovered quinine, which helped fight malaria.
How did the missionaries do against the diseases? It seems anyone who comes to Africa is weak.
Yes, Africa makes a tough breed of people. The missionaries had their hardships coming here. Diseases such as sleeping sickness and malaria would kill some, and the lions got the others. The infrastructure, or lack thereof, was new to the foreigners. They had to walk everywhere and learn new languages, which takes time. There wasn't a shop like back in London that they could stroll in and get bread or medicine.
Nature sure was hostile to these people.
If nature was the only danger they faced, although some tribes welcomed the missionaries, like those along the coast, other tribes would be very against changing their religion or practices.
What do you mean?
Christians were against sacrifice and multiple wives, polygamy if you like. Sometimes the tribes did not want to give this up. That was just among the local religions too. Islamic areas would always be a losing battle since Islam had been there for hundreds of years.
Good thing the missionaries had each other.
Well, not quite.
Explain, Bwana.
Okay, to begin with, there were not a lot of missionaries from each group that was sent. 10 to 20 people at most, traveling in a foreign land. There were small groups, but not each group was part of the same belief system. Within Christianity itself, there was Catholics, Protestants, and Methodists, all believing small differences. This could cause hostility and competition to each other. We will see today in Uganda.
Well, didn't the slaves that they tried to free help them?
The slaves may have been grateful, but not the slave owners. The missionaries were essentially taking away the free labor from their business.
To be honest, these missionaries were quite persistent to be able to have 80% of Kenya Christian today.
Yes, this is true. What other lasting effects do you think came from the missionaries?
I will think of the positive and obvious ones. Christianity and its teachings spread, which, for the most part, promote a good message of brotherhood and helped to end slavery. In order to get these teachings to Africa, there must have been a build-up of Western-style schools, which help teach the natives to read and write. The schools were not limited to just this and could act either as community centers or rehabilitation centers. These helped promote vocational skills and strengthen reading and Christian teachings as well.
Looks like you learned a few lessons. What do you think happened to the infrastructure?
I imagine that since the missionaries had a heck of a time traveling around, that they took this chance to build it up.
All right, on the right track. But be more specific, please.
I would say the first thing they built up were the roads and travel system. This would ensure that everyone and trade items could get to their destinations. You stated traveling was a problem the missionaries faced. I also imagine that since another problem they faced was disease like malaria, they worked on building health centers too.
Wow. The missionaries did bring in Western medicine to Africa, using antibiotics in replacement of traditional African healing, such as herbs. One more thing. Want to guess?
Let's see. They had transport, health, food. I imagine the missionaries wanted to increase the food available. They must have brought in some new farming methods, such as using manure in the field and also educating the locals on things like soil erosion.
This weekend is proving to be a great investment for your knowledge. Now, take a break and I will explain some results that may not be as obvious.
Finally.
Well, since the missionaries needed to be understood by the natives, the books they were using began to be translated in Kiswahili and the tribal languages. It started first with the Bible to increase conversion and slowly went to other books.
I see. And who owned these books?
Some Africans receiving the missionaries helped to read and write and became an educated upper class of people with their own books. This was because of their education and connections with the missionaries. Eventually, even new schools and churches opened up that used Western education styles, but were more in line with African traditions.
Didn't the missionaries do anything for fun besides trying to change the lives of Africans?
As I mentioned earlier, the desire for exploring is in all as humans. The missionaries were some of the first Europeans to see Mount Kenya and Mount Kilimanjaro. They even mapped out and named many of the regions.
They replaced the names we already had?
The foreigners needed something easier for them to pronounce. An unfortunate side effect was the loss of African names and culture. Customs like multiple wives, female circumcision, and sacrifice were changed.
And eventually became
Colonization. Yes, this was the beginning of the Kenyan colony as missionaries wrote back to their governments what they saw. They wished for a safer, more civilized world here, and the European powers saw the opportunity.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history, as you will learn soon. It should be noted that the missionaries did try to play a role in representing African views to the British government. One key figure is Dr. John Arthur.
Who?
Dr. John Arthur was a missionary doctor that opened up one of the first hospitals in Kenya. He actually even performed a surgery on the late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya, when he was a boy.
And Dr. John tried to keep Africans' voices heard?
Yes, in various ways. But we will save that for another day. Come, it is getting late and we have to leave early tomorrow.
Dr. Griffin? What about West and South Africa?
What do you mean?
Well, I feel like I don't know anything about East Africa's relationship to the other parts of Africa. Only the outside world. It must be important before I learn about the colonization that took place.
Come, let us rest our brains for a while. Once we return to Kisumu, we will discuss this.
Okay.
Twende.